And welcome back to this episode of John and T Squared. I'm John Colemorgan, and I'm joined by the wonderful Tracy Arnet and the lovely, lovely, lovely Tracy Bouras. Hello, girls. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Hello to everyone out there. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy. Hi, John. Hey, everybody. Hope you had a good week.
It's gone really quickly again. It's wonderful. It's been a really good week.
I know. I got so much done.
Oh, lucky you. I just feel like I'm getting ever closer to our UFO March. I'm really excited about this. For those of you who may have missed our podcast last week, we have made the decision that as a community, we are going to try and tackle those unfinished fabric objects we've been avoiding, ignoring, putting to one side, and we're going to start tackling those for the month of March. And we're going to be doing a sewing day or a sew-along. Tracy and myself will be joining together on International Quilters Day, and we're going to be doing a sew along, and we'd love it if you could join us. So we're still working out the logistics, but as soon as we've got all of those, we will be able to give that to you. But I'm really excited about getting everything ready. Girls, how's your planning coming along? Tracy B is very lucky. She's only got 4 or 5 of her UFOs, so I think she's probably finished by now, aren't you?
Not quite. There's been a few things. I've been back to work again, so all the great grandeur of being on leave, lots of stuff that I've managed to get done, but starting my sewing room was the first project. Second is to get tackling on the next lot of UFOs.
Love it. Tracy A?
Well, I've been busy cleaning and sorting, and I have moved a few things on, so I am feeling good about getting my UFOs done and just looking forward to all the new stuff I can do.
Fantastic. Now, as Tracy then just very subtly in her description there, she's moved some stuff on. Today's topic is a little more morbid in the fact of what on earth are we going to do with our stashes? God forbid we pass on, because I know we're all terrified our husbands will sell it for the price we told them we paid for it. And we definitely don't want that happening. So, girls, have you got any plans as to what's happening to your stuff?
Not yet. I'm afraid my kids will just chuck it all out, and they'll be really, really cruel, or not cruel, just pitch it because they have no interest in it. So I don't think they know what's involved, whether it's monetary or sentimental attachment, or as to the how come and why does mom have so many sewing machines, like they just don't understand it, my love of it, I guess. So that's my concern. So I guess I should really honestly write it down, because there are a few things that are I have a little collection of Singer attachments and things, like for the old featherweights. Ooh. And there's a couple of them that I found that I scored big time just by walking into an old shop, and so they're worth quite a bit of money. So I need to catalog it and organize it, and so that they would be aware that it's not just to be trashed or given away. I mean, they can give it away, whatever, but not just trash it,
Yeah. It's very hard coming to that decision. The reason I wanted this topic to happen was 2 reasons. Obviously, one of my dear friends, I've spoken about her before, Nicola Bretherton, when she passed away, she had a huge stash. And we organized her estate sale, and it was very, very difficult to be able to do, but also it was very rewarding, because obviously everything that she had was given a new lease on life, and people who potentially couldn't afford to have bought the fabric in its brand new were able to then enjoy the fabric from her as well, and being able to then, we had a Facebook page of all the makes that we made afterwards of the products that she had. It was really special to be able to do that. But as you say, it's really hard if people don't know what they're doing and they are overwhelmed by this collection of stuff that you have. It's very difficult to figure out what to do with it all. Tracy,
Well, I don't have any kids. Well, I don't have any kids that I need to really worry about my stuff. I mean, I would just be horrified if I'm left with if I die and I've got this huge hoard of fabric that I didn't manage to get through. Like, that would really worry me to no end. But you are right, is that you should make a note of what it is that you'd like to have, what to happen with your stuff once you aren't there. But what's happened in one of our guild, of the Good Hope Quilters Guild, is one of the members that had passed away. Her family has donated all her cotton fabric to us, and we're going to divvy it up, and we're going to make quilts for charity. So each person will take fabric and then make it into a quilt, and then we'll donate it. I'm not quite sure which charity it's going to go for. Obviously here in South Africa there are lots of places that can do with help, and most of the time it's for children that'll get a quilt for themselves. So that's really rewarding. So I think if you make a note of what you'd like to happen to your stuff, or donate it to a friend, or make sure that maybe the stuff that you want, that's maybe a little bit more special. But I think that's even more of a reason to get going with your quilts, and to share them with those that you love, and not wait for them to be stuck into boxes as UFOs, or just pieces of fabric that don't have any meaning to anybody else except for you.
I think that's very true, very, very true. I know with Nicola, and I told the story previously, that one of the pieces that she bought, we'd bought together, when she bought it when I was with her, and I turned that into a quilt the first time that I had a chance to sew after buying it from her. And I think that sometimes we do hang on to these fabrics because we love them, and that's great. But there are fabrics that we know that other people would enjoy, but maybe it's time to not keep on to that and recognize that, nope, I'm not going to ever use that fabric. It's time to get rid of it. It's time to give it a new home and let it go somewhere else. It's hard having that foresight and knowledge to be able to do that, though. I think it's quite difficult letting go of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because our tastes have changed over the years, I find, for myself. So there are some colors that I have, or pieces of fabric that I bought that really I know I'm not going to use. So after last week's topic, I've been really looking at that and thinking, yes, this definitely needs a new home. So
but the other side of it is, with the new home, have you considered listing it on one of the local quilting group pages in your area and selling it to other quilters? And you don't have to get you don't have to charge full price for it, but you certainly can get some of your money back doing it that way.
Well, I have a couple of friends and ladies in the group that, like, I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago about this one lady that we give all our scraps to, and she cuts them up into, the smallest square is 2 inches, but she does all these phenomenal quilts. And what I didn't say is she donates every one she makes to someone that has cancer.
Oh, wow.
And so she doesn't ever get her cost for her fabric, and she, all the batting and stuff. So for me, that's a no-brainer, and I'm going to give those pieces to her because it just helps her. And they're so small you can't tell if it's a Christmas fabric or Halloween. She puts it all together, and they're really brilliant quilts. And then the other lady, Rolly, and her sister, and again with donations, they do the quilts for the foster care children in the local town. So all my fabric, that's where when I want to move it on, that's where I give it, because that's, to me, is a really good cause. And at the moment, that's how I support them.
That's
I don't
wonderful.
have time to give to them to sew or anything, but I can give them supplies, and that makes me just as happy.
And you're also taking part in something that's very special, which is wonderful.
Yes.
Because I wish I could know before it was about to happen. I'd like to have sort of 6 or 8 weeks notice, please, so that I can do everything, get rid of everything, so that nobody's lumbered with it. Because obviously my family is actively excluded from the whole process. So I wanted to make sure that obviously everything is for the friends that are taking on the challenge, doing as little as possible. So I'm always mindful that we could go at any time. So that's why I suppose everybody tries to make their bed before they leave home. You don't want people thinking that you were one of those people who never made their bed. And you want to leave all your clothes tidied up nicely and get everything sorted. And I think that's part of the UFO process that we're doing. I think it brings up to my mind, certainly you have so much, are you really going to use this?
Well, that's an interesting point, because if we try and thin the herd and look at our room, our sewing room, or our stash objectively, then you can honestly say, yeah, I'm never going to use that. No, that's got to go. So by the time, if you're not aware that you're ill and you have lots of time, or however much time you're given on this earth, then when you did move on to greener pastures, it might be in a more manageable stash that's left behind. So maybe that's one way to look at it too, that, yeah.
I agree.
I'm not sure. Yeah. So, and it, I have a few featherweights and things. So both my girls have one. And so now it's time to decide, what do I do with the rest,
And you see, the other thing is the sentimentality of it is great, but they are worth a lot of money now.
Yeah.
So it's, what price do you put on that sentimentality?
Yeah. Well, the ones that my girls got, the one that my older daughter Tamara has is the one that my dad gave me. So that's perfect. And then the other one that Dakota got was another one I picked up, but in mint condition. And so the others, yeah, they would just be they would have to figure that out and sell them, and whatever they decide to sell them for is fine with me. Yeah. Someone else can get a really good deal that's always wanted one, or maybe they have friends by that time, their friends will be quilting, or who knows.
People who get a really good deal. And I think as well, how many times have we gone into a charity shop or a thrift store or somewhere and found a piece of, we've got a charity here in quite near to where my shop is, and they're called Work Aid, and what they do is they donate all the proceeds to women in Africa who want to start their own business. And one of the things they ask for specifically is non-electric sewing machines, because they fix those up and then ship them out, and then the women start their own clothing business. And for me, being able to support a charity like that is really important and really lovely, to be able to give back not only to Africa, but also to women who desperately need it. And then going into the shop to then just, have a little look around, because it would be rude not to see what they've done. You always end up leaving with something. And one of the things that I left with recently was an unfinished project. And it was not my fabric choice. It was not my colors. And they wanted something ridiculous, like £7 or £8 for a 50-inch square quilt. And it had the wadding, the backing, the binding. All that needed doing was the thing being quilted. So I bought it, put it onto the long arm quilting machine, quilted it, and then took it back to them and said, there you go on, auction that off and see what you can get for it. And they ended up getting the money I paid for it, which was a pittance. But they then ended up making a couple of £100 when they sold the quilt on afterwards. And I love the fact that I found a little bargain and just it was a day's work to finish it, and then giving that off. And it was just a nice way of being able to give back. And it's a lovely charity to be able to support. So I think as well, when we've got bits and bobs in our stash and the UFOs that we're trying to get rid of, now is the time to potentially take it to a thrift store and to get rid of it now, so you're making room for something else.
Well, in one of my groups a few years ago, I came across a lady. She was her child was in the hospital, it was in the States, and she had to sell her sewing machine in order to pay the hospital bills. And that struck a chord with me, because my little guy was diagnosed when he was 3 with diabetes. So I was in and out of the hospital with him, and I understood. And to me, I've always used my sewing machine as a form of, when I'm sad, I'll sew. When I'm happy, I'll sew. And it's just an outlet for me. So it really struck home for me, and I thought, well, that's really sad. So I had a featherweight sitting around that didn't have a box, it didn't have anything. And so I asked her for her address, and I sent it to her, and I wrote her a letter saying, I totally understand where you're coming from. I've been there with my child. I hope this can help you, find some joy. Well, then she turns out she uses it to make, and this just gives me goosebumps. She finds old prom dresses and wedding dresses and makes preemie burial gowns for these babies that don't make it.
No.
And I just got goosebumps. So something so little had such a profound effect. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just saying that her story resonated with me because I'd been in her shoes and she was just venting. And then other people in the thread, some sent her needles, some sent bobbins, some sent thread, and it just snowballed from that little gesture. So, and that machine I'm really happy that that's where it was meant to go, because I had no plans for it other than I saved it from being, sold off. And so that's kind of cool.
I love that.
It all worked out.
It really shows you how wonderful quilters really are. Like, again and again, we keep seeing how generous they are, how, in one of the groups that I belong to as well, someone had lost their job and people were offering to send money. I just think, gosh, that is so like the generosity and the generosity of people who quilt. I think just because you also sew and you give to people, it's just obviously a natural inherent thing, and it's people love. I think people love to give. So it's such a wonderful story.
That is lovely.
So we don't really have thrift stores here. We've got sort of secondhand, but those are all really, expensive. People sell their stuff on, and then they really make a habit of selling it extra. So I've never really ventured into any secondhand stores to see if there are any old quilts or anything like that. But because there's such a need in South Africa for people who, don't have the income, that our Quilt Guild has an outreach program where people can donate fabric, rulers, things that, I've got several, more than one rosary cutter, and I really don't need more than one. And this has just sort of reminded me that I probably don't need a bazillion of everything, just, the ones that I use all the time, that I enjoy using, and that I should donate the rest, because it's like this culture of always like needing more of one thing, where you can only use one ruler at a time, you can only use one rotary cutter at a time. And I think if you can gift that onto someone.
It's that Marie Kondo again coming in and saying, it's taking up real estate in your house. Do you really need to give it real estate?
Well, not only that, it's stuff that you've got to sort and pack. So every time you want to like sort out your sewing room, like I'm always looking for my rosary cutter. So I'll put it down and then I find the other one. And I'm very disorganized like that. But I just think if you only had one and you had one spot for it, you would be maybe more efficient, and and passing that on to someone else that could really use it is more of value than you having just a stash of rotary cutters. I mean, that's just my little humble opinion on that. So I'll have to get in touch with our guild lady that works with the outreach programs and see what can be donated, because again, if you know that it's going somewhere that is going to be used, I think that's also the biggest thing. And you don't just want to give handouts or pass along to people and it not to be used properly, or just sold for cheap. Then people who want to quilt and learn to quilt but don't have the economic means, that you're helping them out. I think that's just a really nice way of passing along your stash.
I agree. So in 2020, on the 10th of October, I started a little charity called the Quilters Legacy Foundation, which was based in the name of basically what we did with Nicola. And the ethos for that is that people, if they do pass away and they are quilters, and they don't have any family who knows what to deal with it, or they want somewhere to leave it, the ethos of the charity is to be able to create the environment to not only take your machines in, but your fabric and your patterns and your rotary cutters and all of that, and pass those on to people who want to quilt but can't afford it. So you get like a starter bundle, really. And then all the good stuff and the good fabric and the things that will make some money to be able to sell and make some money for it, in order to give the person who's learning to quilt some money towards going to do classes at local quilt shops in their area, to be able to then figure out exactly how it is to quilt, and then have the means to be able to do it, and enough fabric for 3 or 4 projects to be able to get them started. And I felt so passionately about doing that. Setting the foundation up was really important for me to be able to get it done. Of course, luckily, and I'm very pleased of this, no one has died to leave their fabric and stuff to us, which long may that continue. But it's nice to have a sort of organization where you can do it, because we have the Quilters Guild here in the United Kingdom, and it's an amazing institution, but it's not geared and set up for doing that. So if somebody does pass away, then obviously all the amazing women in that area will take the stash in, wash what needs washing, sort it all out, put it into bundles, and then sell what they can. And then it goes off to this to the head office to be able to then pay for their building and salaries and all that type of thing. And for me, it was really important that the people getting the funds were going to be people in need and wanting to learn to quilt, because if we don't get new quilters in, this hobby that we love so much may not make it.
Oh, John, you sound just like me there. Woohoo!
It is. It's true, isn't it?
That's a really wonderful setup that you did, John.
Oh, I'm very proud of it. But it's luckily, as I said, nobody's passed away, so we haven't had any donations in, and I'm really hoping that carries on, because I'm a little nervous that someone with a hoard like mine is going to pass away, and it's all going to live in my garage until I can pass it on to people who can't afford to quilt. Because it's quite a hard thing, and it's a really personal thing, because my stash I find very, very personal. That a lot of us deal with mindfulness and mental health, and when we're having bad times we sew, or we've gone and bought certain fabric that's made us happy, and we're emotionally attached to our stashes. And I think it's always really, I think if you really want to know a quilter, go through their stash. And it's almost as I feel like I'm intruding on someone's life by doing that. So it's a really important thing to do, but equally a very personal thing to do. So it's, you know, long may they continue living, that I don't have to sort through any of them. That's my ethos of it. But I think most people, I know in South Africa, we talk about death a lot more than we do here in the UK. When I was 18, I drafted my first will, my first living will as well in South Africa. Whereas coming here, it's astonishing to me that people in their 50s and 60s have never drafted a will, and they don't want to talk about it. It's not, you know, they actively ignore it. And death, unfortunately, it comes to every single one of us. It doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter what we look like. It doesn't matter how much money we've got. We're all going to go. So for me, making sure that my affairs are in order, especially in the absence of family or presence of family, you decide, it's important to make sure that your affairs are really well catered for and in order, and that the right people are put in place at the right time when you need it. And I think that for me has been really important, but it's in other countries, it doesn't seem to work that way.
Yeah, it's not really over here too. A lot of people don't do wills. They're not really, it's not something talked about either.
I wonder if it's more that people have families, that they know that the law will send everything through to the family. I wonder if that's it.
Well, but here, if you die with no will, the government gets half.
Oh, really?
And then, yeah, and then if you have children, they get half of what's left, and if you're the surviving spouse, you get half. So government gets 50%, the children get 25%, and the spouse would get 25%.
Wow.
Well, that's enough to make you definitely want to make a will.
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly.
Especially with all the taxes everybody pays every year. I think the government have had their share already. Thanks very much.
So it might be different in other provinces, but that here in Quebec, yes. And if you live in Quebec and you pass away without a will, and you have underage children, and you have not specified who is to look after them, like legally, then they become a ward of the state.
Yeah, I think in most places that's the case.
Which Yeah, I mean, some families would step up, but it's just so strange that, no, the government will place them and take them, and yeah, so
Very, very sad.
yeah.
So yeah, boys and girls, please do take advice. And if you want to do your will, do your will. If you don't, that's fine. But just consider what you are going to do with your stash. God forbid something awful happens. And your machine, and we all want it to go to the right places. So make sure you're doing the same.
And
we don't want
another
to
reason to get your UFOs done, John. Another reason to get those UFOs out the way.
Well, you see, what I thought as well, and I jokingly said this to Andrew, I did say that because my funeral is by invitation only and all that nonsense. I'm very high maintenance, as we all know. But everybody who comes to the funeral will then leave with a quilt. That's my plan.
Oh, that's so cool.
I love that, John. That's
and fabulous. I really, really hope that there's a big fight over one of the quilts. I want elbows being thrown. I want shoulder blades being pushed. I want fights over the quilts as to which one they want. I've got this image of the little old ladies that I sew with all sitting there sort of needling each other out the way to get the one that they like the most.
Well, the saying how whoever has the most stash wins, it should be the other way around, and whoever has their UFO finishes before they expire wins.
Oh, that's fight talk, Tracy. Fighting.
I know. But you know what I mean?
Challenge accepted.
Well, I think you win. You'll get there before the rest of us, but that is a good challenge, eh?
It really is.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So
brilliant. So girls, that leads us then on to next week, where we're going to do the unusual topic of quilting with unusual items and unusual materials. And I'm going to challenge the two of you to do your homework and do some research and see what it is that you haven't worked with before and you might want to. I've got a couple under my belt at the moment, so I know I'm cheating because I've got a bit of a head start on you too. But that's what we're going to do next week. Have you girls got anything to finish off with?
Nothing from me that I can think of. I'm still not, my brain's already started thinking about what I need to do for next week's episode, John. Oh, my brain, I may not be able to sleep.
You will. You love your sleep.
I do love my sleep.
Tracy A?
No, I think I'm good. I'm like Tracy B. My brain's already swirling for next week because last night I couldn't sleep because I knew what was coming up for today, and I'm like, oh, so yeah. Food for thought.
It's going to be an exciting topic because people are doing some incredible stuff with PVC. Who knew?
Oh.
Looking forward to that, John.
Brilliant. Well, boys and girls, and thank you all so much for your time today and enjoying our little ramblings of the quilting world. Girls, you two look after yourselves and we will catch up with you next week.
Great stuff, John. Always a pleasure to be chatting to both of you and our ramblings, and have a fantastic week, everyone. And let's make sure that you get rid of your stash and let people know what's going on with what you want done with your fabrics.
Yes, thank you today. And yeah, one stitch at a time, people, and we'll get through it all. One stitch at a time.
You mean one bolt at a time?
Well, okay.
That's only you, John. Only
bolt,
you.
but in the rest of us, one stitch at a time.
Exactly.
Right on.
And please, if you've had any information from today that you need to get more advice on, please chat with your local solicitors or attorneys just to make sure that everything you need to be done is done the way you want it to be done. These are just suggestions and our ramblings. You are not under any obligation to do anything. Do what works best for you. Girls and boys, look after yourselves. Tracy A, Tracy B, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.